So we're in the second part of our series, Modern Romance. Last week, Pastor Greg kicked it off. If you missed it, I want to encourage you to go back because it is the beginning thought for which we will be talking about through this whole series. And I want to begin today by sharing a little bit about our story. Greg and I have been married almost 26 years. 26 years, wow. And I used to always think, gosh, how does God put people together? In fact, sometimes we go to the mall and we're like, how'd they end up together? Have you ever done that? You look at couples and you're like, I wonder how they found each other. But we do that sometimes and we're like, so our story, neither of us were the type of person we thought we would end up marrying. It wasn't anything negative. It was just what it was. He said he would never marry a white sorority girl. I'm a white sorority girl. And I worked at USC, University of Southern California, Fight On. I worked in the football department. Now, he's not a football player. All my friends were football players. So neither of us really looked the way that we would have thought, a future spouse. But thankfully, we weren't just looking at externals. We were looking at some other qualities. But I was asked to come out to Hawaii to work with this man named Kris Brenes, who I knew of at the time. We'd worked together in part in Los Angeles with campus ministry. And I thought, that would be good. I think I could learn a lot from him and how he does ministry, how he leads ministry, because I had gone on a mission trip that he had led before. And I was like, I want to learn from Pastor Kris Brenes. And my pastor said, just don't go fall in love with them. And I said, no, I'm just going to go learn. I'm going to go educate myself on how to be a better campus minister. I'm going to do my... Can you blame her? He said he didn't want me to make it difficult for Greg as a single man trying to doing ministry at UH. So he said, just go out there and work with them. Don't fall in love with them. So I said, okay. And then 3 months later, I had to call my pastor and say, can I have an extension on these 3 months indefinitely? Because we were soon to be engaged to be married. So that's our story. But I think when you're single, you go, how do I get from where I am as a single person to married? There's this big gap in between, and I can't figure out how to make the two happen. And so you start thinking, okay, well, maybe if I look for this, or maybe if I look for this, and we begin to put in our mind all of the things that we think we need to happen to get this relationship started. So it's always, I think, when you're single, you're like, how is this ever going to happen? And I hope to give you some things today that will at least put you on the right path, to at least begin to point you in the right direction when you consider a serious relationship that would hopefully potentially lead towards marriage. Because some of the stuff that people are doing isn't working. I mean, marriages, they say 50% end in divorce. So if we want something different, as Greg said last week, we have to take a different path. If we want something different, we have to take a different path. And last week, Pastor Greg talked about finding the one. And he said to be really fulfilled in life, you have to find the one. And if you want to know what that is, you got to listen to last week. But what is that? What does that look like? Because I think a lot of the things we're looking for are the wrong. A lot of people are finding the wrong one. So the goal is for us to look at what does that really look like? What are those qualities that are important and essential in building a meaningful, healthy future relationship? So Pastor Greg said to be really fulfilled in life, you have to find the one. So what would this look like? So if you want something different, you have to take a different path. So as we look today, I hope that to provide you with a couple things for you if you're single. First of all, see your season of singleness as a season to be maximized, not just endured. Because when you sit there and like, oh, I just want to be married, see it as a season to be maximized. Something that you can do. And I think that is one thing that I really did. I took trips. I went on missions trips. I really worked on my own relationship with God, but see it as a season to be maximized, not just endured. So really go for it in your single person. And then the second point that we're really going to be honing in on today is to consider this. Am I the person I'm looking for is looking for? Now that's kind of a tongue twister, but think about it. Are you the person you're looking for is looking for? And when you're single, this is your opportunity to become that person. So you might think, I want somebody who's faithful, who's in shape, who can do all of these things, who's got this career, all of these. You might have your own little checklist in your mind. Well, ask yourself, am I that person? Am I the person I'm looking for is looking for? Because I think that is a really good place to start in finding the one, or looking for that future relationship that would hopefully lead, though two, yes, because your spouse is, God is the one, and your spouse is the two. So finding the two. Thank you for correcting me. So that is our big thing today to consider. Are you the person you're looking for is looking for? So Proverbs explains it this way about finding a wife. So we're going to talk primarily to the ladies today. Greg will speak to the men next week. But in Proverbs 18, he says, he who finds a wife finds a treasure, and he receives favor from the Lord. He who finds a wife finds a treasure. Treasure. Have any of you ever done those geocaching that they have, those where they give you those coordinates and you go searching for things? My kids have done that, and they've found little treasures that are hidden throughout the island or other places. Have you ever gone looking for treasure? I remember years ago I took my oldest daughter to the mall, and I came home and I realized the diamond in my wedding ring was gone at the mall. And so I went back the next day because it was already closed, and I just went combing the mall in search of this little diamond ring to go in my room. I was on the floor in Claire's searching through glitter and all of the sequins and beads, and never found it. But I was searching for this treasure. And Proverbs says when you find a wife, she's a treasure. Something to be valued, something to be respected, something to be honored. It's rare. Take good care of it. He who finds a wife finds a treasure. But there's two parts. There's the human action, and then there's the God part, where he who finds a wife finds treasure, and he receives favor from the Lord. So our part is to become the person you're looking for is looking for. So think about what kind of future relationship you want in your spouse. What do you want that relationship to look like? What are some things that you would hope your future spouse would have? And let's work to become those things. Some of these things, these qualities are found in Proverbs 31, and that's where we're going to be spending most of our time today. This is a really interesting chapter. We're told these are the words of a king named Lemuel. No one really knows who King Lemuel was or where he came from. This is really the only reference to him that we have in the Bible. Some Jewish legends will propose that this was Solomon and that the woman writing this was Bathsheba. We really don't have any evidence for that, but some people have said that. So the two things we do know is that his name Lemuel means belonging to God. So it was a king that was trying to rule and reign in a godly way. And we're told that this is a message that his mother taught him. In fact, in verse 1, it says, the sayings of King Lemuel contain this message which his mother taught him. So this is a good thought, guys. What would your mother say about the women you spend a lot of time with? What would your mother say about them? Would your mother approve? Would she agree with, say, oh, these are good people for you to be hanging around with? So what we don't know the exact identity of the woman, but we do know that she was a loving mother giving instruction to her son, and she's letting him know the type of woman that she is hoping for her future daughter-in-law. And I must say her standards are extremely high, and we're going to read it in just a moment. But Proverbs, it's actually a poem. This passage is a poem, and we're going to look at verses 10 through 31, and it's an acrostic, which means that it takes each letter of the Hebrew alphabet, and the line starts with that letter. So if it was done in English, it would be like A is for apple, B is for banana, and so on and so forth. So she writes this poem to her son, encouraging him to seek out a wife like this woman that she's going to begin to describe. So this mom knew the importance of character in a marriage. She knew that when you marry a person, you get so much more than just their physical beauty or their talents. You get their character. And there are many things that we can dig out of this short passage, but let me start by what I hope you draw out of this, and then what I don't you hope draw out of this. So first of all, this is not a checklist, ladies and men. So husbands, don't go home and put this before your wife and say, okay, let's look at this and see where we can make improvements. But at the same time, it should be a standard that should raise our hopes and our aspirations for what we could be. So, first of all, don't be condemned by this list, but let's be inspired by it. So let's start with verse 10. Who can find a virtuous and capable wife? She is more precious than rubies. Her husband can trust her, and she will greatly enrich his life. She brings him good, not harm, all the days of her life. She finds wool and flax and busily spins it. She's like a merchant ship bringing her food from afar. She gets up before dawn to prepare breakfast for her household and plan the day's work for her servant girls. She goes to inspect a field and buys it. With her earnings, she plants a vineyard. She is energetic and strong, a hard worker. She makes sure her dealings are profitable. Her lamp burns late into the night. Her hands are busy spinning thread, her fingers twisting fiber. She extends a helping hand to the poor and opens her arms to the needy. She has no fear of winter for her household, for everyone has warm clothes. She makes her own bedspreads. She dresses in fine linen and purple gowns. Her husband is well known in the city gates, where he sits with the other civic leaders. She makes belted linen garments and sashes to sell to her merchants. She is clothed with strength and dignity. She laughs without fear of the future. When she speaks, her words are wise, and she gives instructions with kindness. She carefully watches everything in her household and suffers nothing from laziness. Her children stand and bless her. Her husband praises her. There are many virtuous and capable women in the world, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty does not last, but a woman who fears the Lord will be greatly praised. Reward her for all she has done. Let her deeds publicly declare her praise. All right, so let's talk about that. Before you roll your eyes and check out, let's just talk about it, okay? So this woman is skillful in a lot of things. I mean, forget that. She's good at everything. She is great she's quite exceptional. And she has, and I've talked to women who have had this put before them, and it's this unattainable standard. And it is not meant to be an unattainable standard. I mean, consider this. According to this passage, she doesn't sleep. I mean, she wakes up super early. She stays up super late. She has great biceps. She buys property. She farms her own food. She owns a vineyard. She dabbles in the stock market. She wears a lot of purple. She makes all the clothes for her family, and she makes the fabric for the clothes for her family. She cares for her kids, cares for her servants, cares for the poor, keeps her home warm at night, and doesn't eat carbs, and she always has a smile on her face. So the impeccable skill and the attitude. It sounds like this woman really has it all figured out. And perhaps you've seen these ladies on Pinterest, and you look at this and you're like, I can never be that. I can never do that. What if I don't garden? What if I can't cook? What if I can't balance my checkbook? And here's an interesting fact. One of the day Greg knew he loved me was the day that I bounced all these checks and I burst into tears. Because it was before, this was back in the old days where nothing was online. You had to actually physically write every check, and you could only get money if you went to the bank. So this was back in those days, and I had, my paychecks were delayed and coming out to Hawaii, and I had paid some bills before it had cleared. Anyway, I just burst into tears, and he was like, oh, isn't that sweet? So obviously I failed at Proverbs 31 because I couldn't balance my checking account. But what if you don't cook? What if you hire a sitter for your kids during the week? What if you never get married? What if you don't have children? Does this mean that I'm not living up to this standard that God has for me as a woman? And I would say that is not true. That is not true. Remember, this is a mom writing to her son. So I have 3 boys, and if they were to say, Mom, what kind of woman do you want me to marry? I'd probably give them Proverbs 31. Yeah. I'd say, I want to make sure she can do this, and be sure she can do this. Because I'm a mother. I want my son to have the best, right? So let's pull out some of the big non-negotiables from this. Things that transcend your talents and your skills and your individual uniqueness and all of the things that make you your own little quirky, beautiful you. Let's look at just some of the non-negotiables. Okay, first one is be trustworthy. Be trustworthy. So remember, we're looking at becoming the person we're looking for is becoming the person we're looking for is looking for. What would be the first big thing you'd want in somebody? To be trustworthy. You'd want them to be trustworthy. In verse 12, it says, in verse 11, her husband can trust her. She will greatly enrich his life. Think about how important that is. Trust is the foundation of a marriage. It's the foundation of any good relationship. If I can't trust someone, I'm only going to be able to give so much of myself to the relationship. So in this situation, this mother is saying her husband trusts her. So what can you do to build trust in your relationships now before you get married? Or if you're already married, to continue building trust in your marriage. So your husband, your spouse, your future spouse would safely trust you. Do you do what you say you're going to do? Are you faithful? Have you taken those steps to build trust in your relationships? Integrity, to where people can count on you. They're like, oh, I don't know if she's going to show up. I don't know if she's going to call me back. I don't know if she's going to get that project done. I don't know. So we want to build trust in our relationships. We want to build trust as the foundation so that we can then enter into a marriage and say, I give you this, my trust. You can trust me because I've proven myself trustworthy before marriage. For Greg and I, this was really important for us. When I came to know Christ as a college student, I didn't date much. I didn't date after I came to know Christ at all. I had a lot of guy friends, but I really wanted to be able to give my future husband this foundation of trust in our relationship. So I took a season to work on myself, to become the person I was looking for. And I wanted to build integrity. I wanted to build trust in my relationship. So that is, I think, the big thing you can give to your future spouse is trust. So work on it now, before you're married, before you enter into a relationship. Begin to build that record of trust. That will be the foundation of your relationship. And one of the big starting places in the New Testament, Paul is giving these instructions to a younger man named Timothy. And he's giving this standard for relationships. And here's what he says in 1 Timothy 5. He says, "Do not rebuke an older man harshly, but exhort him as if he were your father. Treat younger men as brothers, older women as mothers, younger women as sisters, with absolute purity." So you want to build trust now in your relationships as single people. Conduct your relationships with absolute purity. Because when you get married, you bring in all of your past into your marriage. So wouldn't it be wise now to build trust for your future spouse by the way you treat people in your relationships now? With absolute, we get it when we go to the doctor. We want to make sure that those doctors' hands are clean, that the instruments are clean. We want purity. Right? When we go to the restaurants, we want to make sure that restaurant is clean, that they've passed their health inspection. But somehow we blur the lines in our relationships. We blur the lines, and Paul is saying absolute purity in your relationships. This kind of woman, this kind of relationship will greatly enrich your life. You don't want to have to be worrying, my spouse going to be home on time? What are they doing at the office? You want to be able to have absolute trust, safely trust. So build a record of trust in your relationships. Second thing is work hard. A lot of this proverb talks about this woman's work ethic. I mean, granted, she was doing everything, but it talks about her work ethic. Work hard now. Work hard now. Why is this important? Man, this is why this is important, because being married to you is hard work. Being married to you is hard work. But I'm joking. But a good marriage is work, right? A good marriage is work. It's great work, but it's work. And having kids is work. Great work, fulfilling work, but it's work. It's work. It's sleepless nights. It's giving of yourself. It's sacrificing. It's poopy diapers and throwing up and embarrassing tantrums in Target and all of these things. It is continually work, all the time, work. So this is a time for you to begin to develop those muscles of working hard and developing your character, because when you marry someone, you marry their character. You may think that you're marrying their looks. You're really marrying their character. When you marry someone, you marry their character. And who you are before you get married, you become that same person, even to a greater degree after. After you get married. When you marry someone, you marry their character. So it's super important when you're single to take that season of singleness to maximize it by really working and developing your character. What does that look like? I would think, get to work on time. Do your projects. Turn in your projects on time. Maximize this time to pursue your career, to go to school, finish your degree, to do all of those things that maximize that season. But it's also a good season to deal with your stuff. To deal with your stuff. If you've got trust issues, daddy issues, mommy issues, bad relationship in the past issues, this is a good season for you to deal with your issues, deal with your past, so you don't drag all of that into your marriage. Next thing, show kindness. Show kindness. In verse 20, it says she extends a helping hand to the poor. And then in verse 26, it says, when she speaks, her words are wise, and she gives instructions with kindness. And I think this is really, really telling of a person, is how they speak to others, how they treat people. And this is something you can, as a single person, look for in your future relationships. Is this woman or man, if you're boy or girl, how does she treat other people? Is she respectful? Is she respectful to the way she talks to her parents or to her siblings? Because you really see, not just when their guard is up and they're talking to their friends, but you really see what's inside when you see how they interact with the people closest to them. Is she kind? Is she respectful? Is she looking to the needs of others, or is she just looking to the needs of herself? Is she engrossed in her cell phone while everybody else is doing things around her? And this is something I look when my kids bring friends home. I'm like, oh, the ones that come and they say, "Hello, Mrs. Brenes," and look me in the eye, shake my hand. "How are you today?" Those are like, oh, that's a good friend. Or if we finish dinner and they're like, "Oh, let me help you with that." Or one time I came back from Costco and my kids' friends came out and helped me unload Costco. I'm like, these are good friends. Hang out with these kids. But you see the character of someone by how they're willing to serve, go beyond their own little world and their own needs to actually serve other people. And the best indicator of future potential is past performance. So look before you get married and see what they're doing before they get married, because they're not just going to change when you get married. And marriage is a lot of work, and it's a lot of serving of yourself. It's a lot of putting your needs aside for the needs of your family. So this is a really important thing to look for. And we see this in Genesis 24 in the account of a man named Abraham who's looking for a wife for his son Isaac. And he asks his servant Eliezer to go and find his son a wife. Eliezer leaves Abraham's property and goes to a well, and he prays, "Lord, would you send someone to me who's a servant who would not only give me water, but will also water my camels?" So he just says, I'm just going to go look for somebody who's going to serve, not just come to the well to get their own water, but I'm going to look for somebody that's going to come to the well and get their own water, but then also offer to serve me and my camels. So he asks that of God. And then to draw water from a well in those days, it was hard work. You had to, it was physical work. It wasn't just going to the faucet and getting a drink of water. It was hard work. And this woman, Rebecca, comes and he says, "Here's some water, and now let me go and also get some for your camels." So she wasn't just doing her job so she could get on with her day and do her thing. She actually looked for ways to serve this man and his camels. And I think one of the biggest things marriage does reveal is our selfishness. It's our selfishness. It's our needs, our desires. And for a marriage to really be healthy and to last, it requires us to come to terms with our selfishness on a daily basis, to sacrifice our needs for the greater needs of the family, of the marriage. So that's something for if you're single, to really look for now. Look for someone who's looking for opportunities to serve others. And Jesus said it this way to his disciples, "The greatest among you must be a servant." A servant. And then lastly, love God. Love God. In verse 30, this mother says, "Charm is deceptive." And you know those people. You've met people that have been really skillful at saying the right thing. And she says, "Charm is deceptive, and beauty does not last. But a woman who fears the Lord will be greatly praised." There's something about godliness that is beautiful at any age. You may look like a supermodel when you get married, but even the supermodels get old. And the woman who fears the Lord, that transcends your age. So how do you do that? What does it look like to fear the Lord? Make Jesus your one. And Greg talked about that last week. Jesus is your one, your spouse is your two. Make Jesus your one. Make Jesus your one. When I was single, there was a season where I remember one day going, "Oh, I'm not looking to other people for my satisfaction anymore. I was looking to God. And I remember going, that must be God preparing me for marriage. Because I had, up until that point, been looking to other people to fulfill these needs that I had. And when I came into a relationship with Jesus, I said, God, you're my one, and I'm going to focus on making you my one, and I'm going to trust you to bring my spouse to be that too. And I remember after a couple of years going, I am not looking for fulfillment in all of these other things in relationships anymore. And for me, it was a wake up, like Jesus really is my one now. He really is. And when you come into a marriage, if Jesus is your one, then you're not going to put these unrealistic expectations on your spouse. You're going to be fulfilled in who you are and who God made you to be, and it will complement your husband or your wife and their gifts and who's God's created them to be. But you won't be taking from each other only what God is meant to provide. And I think I think many people go into marriage hoping that they'll get this fulfillment in this marriage that really only Jesus was meant to bring. So make Jesus your one. So what if finding your future spouse was as simple as you becoming the most godly version of you that you could become, and then looking for the most godly version of the other person that you could find? I think that's a good place to start for all of us, right? So Paul says it this way, that it really is the effect of what Christ does in our life. In 2 Corinthians 5:15, as we close today, and he died for all, that those who live should no longer live for themselves, but for him who died for them and was raised again. So the question to ask today is, who are you living for? Who are you living for? Is Jesus your one? Are you living to please him? With your spouse or your future spouse, the two. The gospel gives us this fullness that really empowers us to serve others and to be generous with others, even when we don't get our own way, even when things don't work out the way we want. But it's this happiness that comes through serving others, not hoping for something in return. And that's really what a healthy marriage is. It's two whole people who are complete and fulfilled in who they are, coming and contributing to this beautiful marriage together. Not looking to get, but looking to give. So when you consider the person you are becoming, and when you consider, are you the person you're looking for is looking for, think of these four things. Think of these four things and ask Jesus to help you become trustworthy, to continue to develop a hard work ethic, to show kindness to others, and then lastly, to really make Jesus your one. Because when you do that, then that's the foundation of a healthy marriage relationship.